What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, where, of course, if you are watching on our YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, joining me as he always does for a THI podcast, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here to hit on a hot topic amongst not only Carolina fans, but people covering Carolina in the media right now, and that's kind of the activity surrounding the transfer portal, as that's obviously a massive topic during the off season, not only with guys leaving, but who's going to come in to replace some of these guys that have left. So Carolina's obviously lost a few guys in the portal as of right now. Tyler Nickel, Dontrez Styles, Puff Johnson, throw Justin McCoy in there as well. So there's obviously some guys that Carolina needs to bring in, and we're expecting some other guys to leave as well. So AJ, you put a big intel drop on the boards on Thursday evening. We're recording this one on Friday afternoon. If you are a subscriber, go check that out. If you're not, go sign up for $8.33 a month. You can get those kind of intel drops and be a Carolina insider too. Links in the description. But what kind of insight can you give us on what's going on right now with the Tar Heels? You know, we can start with outgoings if you want to, and then potentially talk about some incomings later. So what intel can you give us in that respect in regards to the portal?
Of the four that have entered, I could say in a snapshot, I think Justin McCoy is a skilled guy who maybe wasn't bouncy enough to play at North Carolina in an extended role. He has a chance to go to grad school for a year and get it paid for and play ball somewhere. So he's going to do that. He wouldn't have had a bigger role at UNC next year regardless. So I think he probably made a good personal decision. Gets to play a lot for a year. He's been a bench player for 4 years. So go somewhere and just ball out and get 1 year closer to having your master's. I think that's a smart thing for him. For Dontrez Styles, without getting into specifics, there was definitely some tampering going on for a while during the season. There were lots of schools that were somewhat interested, but perhaps some tapered over time. I think in Dontrez's case, we've sort of discussed it a lot, and a lot of stuff on the boards. I've probably done more Dontrez stuff on the boards than with respect to him and why he's not playing and what his skill set is and what his strengths and weaknesses are than any player in the team this year. And that's why after the Boston College game and the ACC tournament, I was in the locker room and Dontrez sitting there by himself, just messing with his shoes or something. And I went over, did a little interview, and I asked him some questions about staying ready and just kind of what he's been through. So there were some people out there that thought it wasn't right to do that, but said, absolutely, I want to know what's going on with him. And yeah. I also think that what you're going to get, what someone else is going to get with him is a smart kid, a good kid, someone who's really athletic, but definitely needs to work on skills, ball handling, passing. And he even acknowledged that a couple of times in the Florida State game this year, just a few weeks ago, that he was kind of out of place. So it's tough to come in and play half the minutes your sophomore year as you did your freshman year when your coach is talking you up. I think there's a lot of stress when you get on the floor. He said he was nervous. So I don't think anybody's really seen who he is yet, at least on the outside world. They have in Chapel Hill. And there were discussions about him coming back. But to be honest with you, I don't think Carolina was tugging at the pant leg of any of the four guys that have left. Nickel, there were some factors there about certainly playing time was an issue. And also you've got the leading scorer in Virginia high school history on your bench, who's supposedly a great shooter. And I've seen him shoot a lot, when not in game action. And he's a fantastic shooter. And you've got guys on the floor who can't hit anything. They can't throw it in the ocean, and he's not playing. So I think there was some frustration there. Yeah, and then with Puff, Puff can't stay healthy. He's had trouble staying healthy. I like Puff. I like the family. Cam was wonderful to deal with. Their father's a really good guy. I think Puff is a really good kid that would love to have finished out at North Carolina, but Carolina couldn't make him any promises because he can't stay healthy. It's like Storm Duck in football. Can't make you a promise if you've only been healthy for 3 games in 3 years. So whatever Hubert's doing with the roster remake right now, he has to make sure that he's got a 3 that could start, and barring the unforeseen, is going to be a guy that he could count on for starting 35 games or whatever it is next year. Unfortunately for Puff, that's not the case. He's been banged up so many different times, so many different parts of his body. And to be perfectly honest, his performance this season as a junior was really inconsistent. I think that was part of that discussion as well. If you want me to comment on some of the other, we can hit on some of the other stuff on the roster as well. But those are the 4 guys who left. There's a snapshot sort of about what the deal is. And I think in the grand scheme of things, I do not want this to come off as disrespectful toward any of these kids. But when you look around college basketball, the revolving door a lot of these programs have, you can lose some guys that you would want to stay in your program, but that doesn't mean that you lose a lot in the end because of what you might get in to replace them. So perhaps Carolina could have addition by subtraction, not because they didn't lose anything, but they have a chance to get better through the portal by bringing in something more. They did it in football where they lost some starters, but I think they got better through what they brought in, and it was good for the starters to move on and the guys that left in football. And I think for these kids, it's probably a good thing for them to move on because they have opportunities to find perhaps a better fit for themselves. And Carolina has an opportunity to replenish with maybe something, the aggregate maybe being a little bit better for the program for the 2024 team. Yeah,
no doubt. For the people who've seen the intel drop you put it on Thursday night, a lot of people already kind of know what's going on, but I'll ask you this before we move on to maybe potential incomings and how that's coming. Pretty safe to say that those aren't the only guys that will be probably heading out of the program. I think I can confidently say that, right?
I think the expectation is that, but I also think there's some wait and see going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things one guy in particular may have been waiting for, I think everybody knows in the program now, there's a lot of misinformation that gets put out there. And a lot of people say, well, gee, I read this, I saw that, and it's not coming from anything legitimate. There's only a few media outlets that are connected to what's going on. And we don't know everything. None of us know everything that's going on. But I would think that someone like DeMarco Dunn's kind of sitting back and waiting. What's going to happen with Caleb? What are they going to do in the portal? We don't know. We have not really had any success getting what I would call reliable information on DeMarco or Seth Trimble. So those are 2 guys that we don't really know. And it's kind of weird now that you have to sort of look at every guy on the roster.
I know.
Because just a few years ago, you would just assume that if you're not a senior, you're going to be back and especially you wouldn't have to report.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to even report or even post on the board that such and such is coming back because it's understood that they're coming back. But the times have changed dramatically in the last few years. So I think the Caleb Love stuff, when it gets public, we've posted on the board what's happening. When it gets public, then I think that we'll see some more dominoes there. But a lot of this depends on what who Hubert brings into the program. And there's no rush to bring in anybody right now. So some of these decisions may hold out for a while. They don't have to hit the portal right now. The portal's going to be open for a while. Mm-hmm. You remember last year, Kerwin Walton entered the portal on the last day.
Yeah.
And so there were lots of things going back and forth. Well, Kerwin's probably going to stay now. Well, Kerwin's probably going to leave now. We were hearing that, and it wasn't consistent. So it's a mistake to say absolutes in when you're talking about the portal. And sometimes it's best to not float things in a public mainstream without having it a little bit more vetted, just even the supposed stuff, because I think a lot of these cases are very, very fluid right now. They're fluid in Chapel Hill with the staff, with the players, and it's extraordinarily fluid with the guys that they're going to be going after, try to bring in to replace the scholarships that are lost.
Not to mention NCAA tournament's still going on. So there's teams still in there, and there will be guys that enter the portal on those teams. So a little bit's probably also a waiting game, and the perfect kind of segue into incomings who might potentially be coming into the program who Carolina's reached out to. There's still going to be a lot of movement there because, like I said, there's a lot of kids that haven't entered the portal yet. They're still playing basketball, and you will see who those guys end up being. And I know for a program like Carolina, you want to go after the best guys. So there could be a handful of guys that are still on teams right now playing at late stages of the NCAA tournament that Carolina might be hard after when the time comes. So I know we've also David Sisk, our basketball recruiting guy, has put a lot of intel in terms of guys that Carolina's reached out to or talked to early on so far in the portal. So last thing we'll talk about is potential incomings. What kind of insight can you give us? And again, if you want this information, sign up, $833 a month, links in the description below. What kind of insight can you give us on potential incomings and how that process is going for Hubert Davis right now?
Well, if you could hear, my dog has a lot to say about what's going on in the portal.
It wouldn't be a
THI
podcast if there wasn't a dog barking in the background.
I know, especially with David, because his dog yips all the time during podcasts. But I think it's a fascinating time. And if you're a North Carolina fan, as jaded as some feel because 4 guys have left and a 5th will soon, and maybe others, it should be also a time of excitement because just watch the games.
Yeah.
Watching the Kansas State, Michigan State game, which was epic. Mm-hmm. Kansas State's point guard is becoming a national star overnight. You know where he played the first 3 years in college? Little Rock.
Yeah.
Tyson Walker is a really good player at Michigan State. They desperately needed him to be a little bit better last night in order to survive and advance. And a lot of Carolina fans might remember when Northeastern strolled into the Dean Dome in February of the COVID year. He scored, I think, 18 or 20 points against Tar Heels that night playing for Northeastern. My point is, and let me add a few other things. Nike Sabandi, ACC Sixth Man of the Year. He came from Miami of Ohio. Nelly Cummings, who is a very important player for Pitt this year. He came from Colgate. My point is, do not make a judgment on a kid because of where they play. I've seen a lot of people that have been complaining about Hubert talking to Timberlake up there at Towson. Cut it out. There are dudes everywhere. Jacob, I told you a long time ago, one of the first things I remember telling you when you came on board was one of my favorite things to do when I used to cover the whole league and certainly the whole area, the Triangle and Wake Forest, is I'll never forget being back when NC State used to allow the media to sit courtside. I'll never forget being courtside at about the top of the key, and State was playing New Hampshire. And I'm watching the New Hampshire kids and I'm thinking, man, these dudes can ball. It's just that State can ball more, right? ACC teams can ball more. My point is there are players everywhere. They're all over the place. And so much of it is fit. And they're looking for guys that can fit. And they could go out there and get a couple of dudes that are from schools that some Carolina fans maybe had never heard of before. But that doesn't mean they can't play because these guys are all over the place. There are so many transfers that have impacted the NCAA tournament. And it's not just the Keontae Johnson's, when you go from Florida to Kansas State, there are a lot of kids that are moving way up from lesser leagues that are able to help power conference teams. And you asked a really good question before we started recording.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Why don't you go ahead and ask the question here so you can get full props for it.
I play a little devil's advocate on this because obviously Carolina's got a small sample size of kind of transfers, especially over the last few years that have come in. And really if we're being honest, let's be honest, guys, really the only guy who's worked has been Brady Manick. And so I know different teams, different reasons why guys might not have worked out. But for me, when I think of Brady, I think we talked about it at length that day. Okay, Brady Manick came from Oklahoma. He was there for 4 years. He played at a very high level. He was in Allen Fieldhouse many a times playing important games. He was playing in one of the toughest conferences in college basketball. So you can see how. And AJ, let's not forget, even he had some struggles early on, kind of adapting. It took him time to figure it out at Carolina. And of course that was going to happen with a new head coach too. But to play devil's advocate to that, when I think a guy going from Little Rock to Kansas State, I say, okay, I can see that jump because whatever way you look at it, Kansas State is not North Carolina when it comes to basketball. All you got to do is walk in both arenas and look up. It's not. There's a different fan base. There's more fans. There's more expectations, and there's more pressure. So when I think of guys that come into Carolina, you have to be able to play, but I think it's even more importantly, and I don't know exactly how you evaluate this, you have to have a guy whose personality can handle the expectations, the pressures, the stresses that come with Carolina. Because AJ, you might have a guy come in who's really talented. Let's say he has 2 bad games to start the season. Carolina fans are going to be on him, especially when you look at where the program's been at in the last 4 years. And I'm not dogging on Carolina fans. There's more fans, there's more expectations. Right. There's just so much more of an allure and a pressure that comes with playing at a program like this, especially a program like Carolina that over the last 4 years has not met the expectations that a lot of Carolina fans have set out. I mean, 10 plus losses in the last 4 seasons. So the pressure is even more on right now for Carolina to bring the right guys in. So is it harder to fit in for guys like that? Because for me, again, like I said, you got to be talented, but I think you also have to have the mentality and personality to be able to handle a lot of the outside noise that comes with playing at a program like North Carolina.
I think it's a fantastic question, and I think it's a really good point. And I think it's an accurate point in many respects. I will say I thought Justin Pierce was a pretty good. I think he was what they thought they were going to get.
Yeah, and that team injuries.
The problem with that team is the other parts. He's a guy that's a great fit if the other parts are popping like they're supposed to. They didn't, so more was put on him. So we saw more of his weaknesses. So I think that was the case there. And with Pete Nance, and Pete mentioned, I mean, end of February, well, I'm the new guy. Mm-hmm. So he came in alone to a team that was that said that their motto was to win a national championship. I mean, they said, championship or bust. They said, run it back. Those are their words. So that put a lot of pressure on him. Then suddenly he's not the guy people thought he was, and he's getting deluged with negativity. I do think what will help in this case this year is the fact that they're going to bring 3 or 4 kids in. They're going to come in together. So the pressure, the spotlight won't be on just one of them like it was Pete. And Pete had to come in and replace a guy that overnight became beloved at UNC.
I mean, he's kind of
10 years from now.
He's kind of got a cult.
In 10 years from now at the Dean Dome, when they run the, I'm Marcus Page and I'm a Tar Heel. When they do, I'm Brady Manick and I'm a Tar Heel, who's going to get a loud roar.
Yeah, a lot of noise.
And he was there for a year, not even a year, right?
Yeah.
So I do think coming in with multiple guys will make that a little bit easier. But I think what will increase the challenge, and this might be part of what Hubert, maybe he doesn't, maybe Hubert's so tunnel vision he's not really aware, but I do think Hubert begins the season on a slightly warm seat. And I think it can intensify very quickly. They have to go to the Bahamas at Christmas, and they have not done well in the Bahamas in the past. Mm-hmm. So they'll play at least 2 very, very losable games, and maybe 3 losable games when they're there with a makeshift roster in many respects, or not a makeshift, but a reconstructed roster.
Yeah, a lot of new faces. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be Armando's second time in the Bahamas, by the way. And he played one of his best games ever against Oregon in the Bahamas a few years ago. So maybe that'll get him going too. But I think there are 2 ways to look at it. The bottom line is they have to bring guys in. So the interview process, Hubert calls it speed dating. Well, if you have to find your mate when you're in a speed dating scenario, then you have to be ultra perceptive.
Yeah.
And you have to really do an excellent job of vetting people quickly and riding on your gut instinct. Mm-hmm. We don't know what Hubert's gut is just yet. We know he said some things that didn't really match up, like DeMarco Dunn and Dontrez Styles are going to be 2 of the best players to ever play at North Carolina. And I'm so glad we have Pete right now because he should be in the NBA. I think Pete Nance is a better player than he showed at North Carolina, because I think in the end it wasn't a great fit from a basketball standpoint.
Yeah.
So maybe in another fit, perhaps Pete would look more like an NBA player. But Hubert has to do a great job trusting his gut, his intuition with the kids he's going to bring in. He's got to bring in kids that can handle that, or at least he can handle it. But he's also got to bring in kids that are going to be an active part of things. And that's why right now they have no 3s, but what are most 3 men? They're bouncy, should be bouncy, athletic, vibrant. That's what we're seeing out there in the tournament. That's what you see when you watch all these other teams. They've all got very athletic 3 men that can make some things happen and fill the lanes. So, and I think having Armando and RJ back will help those kids assimilate as well. And they are obviously embracing the idea of new kids coming in the portal. Mm-hmm. It was maybe tougher for a couple of years because it was North Carolina's bringing in guys that were other threads. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was hard for a lot of people to take at first. I think things have changed so much so quickly that won't really be that much of an issue this time around.
I agree. We're going to wrap it up here in a second, but I just want to ask you one last question in terms of incomings, when you can expect guys to maybe. Do you think it's going to be a pretty drawn out process? It's going to take some time.
Well, I think if it ends up drawn out, it's just because of what I just said. I think there's a lot of due diligence. There are a lot of dudes to come over. And if anything has been hammered home here in the last few weeks, college basketball, that the players have come from anywhere. Mm-hmm. So the staff, I don't know how many kids are in the portal right now, something like 800. It
was like a record that entered the first day.
Yeah. So they would be foolish to not lay some kind of eyeballs on every one of those kids.
Yeah.
So that takes time. They don't have the staff infrastructure that football has, where you have 3 people that are basically watching every one of these kids every day, in addition to the staff. So, and and they have to get some of this done, I would think, in the next 4 weeks. Today is what, March 24th?
Yeah.
By April 24th, I think you want to have your guys.
Yeah, you want to, yeah.
But, no doubt. But look, they got one last year, and we were writing portal stories and doing portal drops on the board, and we did a portal podcast in April last year. Pete Nance committed the day of the showtime on June 18th. So Hubert will wait it out, but I think it's better now to get the kids sooner because you want to get them to Chapel Hill in May. You want them to come in after the 1 week break or whatever it is from when final exams in and your summer school starts. You want to get them in there in May so they could begin to assimilate with everybody else and begin the process of being Tar Heels and playing in that environment, and also have as many opportunities as possible to play with the pros that come back and work out. So I do think a month, if it's 4 players in a month, I think it's doable. They need to, they're grinding. Hubert's not going to the beach this weekend to check out the waves and just relax. There's no decompression until all this stuff is done, if ever. So it's going to be a busy time for the staff. It's going to be a busy time for us. We're going to be dropping as many intel nuggets as we can on the board. But I do think they're going to come up with some interesting players, and do not judge them by where they play right now or where they played the last couple of years. Just have faith in the fact that if the staff thinks these guys are good enough, you got to allow it to play out, because none of us know any better. I don't know who most of these kids are. I've never seen most of them play. And we're going to go by a couple of clips by the time people make determinations. So allow the process to play out and just think of how exciting it might be to get something fresh going on in Chapel Hill, because I think it's needed. And I think that's what most of the people want. And now it's going to happen.
Yeah, massive offseason for Hubert Davis and his staff, and it's going to be a fascinating look. It's going to be it might be a busier offseason than it was busier in the season with all the stuff they're going to have going on, especially when you look at not only do they need to bring kids in, but I think that changes and tweaks and need to be made as well in the program and philosophies and things like that too. So it's going to be a fascinating offseason. And
yeah, it's not just a personnel thing.
No.
There are a lot of boxes that need to be checked that are not just personnel. So, and I think they know that. So this is going to be a very important 6 months between now and the time they start practicing again.
It is, man. It really is. We'll go ahead and wrap that one up here, AJ. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another episode of the THI podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you like it below if you did enjoy the video. You're excited to see who comes in for the Tar Heels. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you share, subscribe, hit that notification as bell real quickly. Click the link below. Go sign up for TarHeelIllustrated.com. Premium subscription, $8.33 a month. You can get all these intel drops, all the information going around right now. You can see it. You can be a Carolina insider too. And trust me, guys, there's going to be a lot more intel dropping over the next month in particular. So I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. We appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.